Yesterday, panic set into Russian Telegram channels. They all claimed that Ukrainian counteroffensive had begun. What do you know? There started to be reports south from Rehi, and we'll look at the locations on the military map of Ukrainian use of JDAMs, HIMARS, artillery, tubed rocket systems like Grads, tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, ACPs, everything being pushed to the front. Of course, this all comes from the Russian Telegram channels. Ukrainian side is silent, as usual when they're up to something. Long-range strikes happened in Tokmak, Melitopol and other settlements. Something big truly is happening. What is it? What's really going on? Since the push is bigger than the days before, Russian channels are in a panic and there's a posting war going on online. Ukrainian supporters post videos and photos of successes on the Ukrainian side. Russian supporters on Telegrams post videos and photos of destroyed Ukrainian equipment, stating that the counteroffensive is dead in water. Where's the truth? Let's take a very specific but very important case. Russians claim they have destroyed the first Leopard 2A4 tank. They share one very specific video or an image from that video claiming that this tank was destroyed. Well, the facts are that yesterday first Leopards were spotted on the front. Actually, this info comes from the Ukrainian side. We have photos of it like this one here. So it's not impossible. But since we know Russian cope is real, I cannot really believe it immediately also. In the video what the Russians share, there is a supposed Ukrainian convoy, a tank convoy, actually Leopard tank convoy, falling under Russian artillery fire. A few tanks are destroyed. We are used to seeing videos like that happening to Russian convoys. This could very well be Ukrainian Leopard tank convoy. There's nothing suggesting it isn't, because Ukrainians are pushing very heavily in the southern front right now and they're using Western tech. In this video later we go into why they're doing it, because this is not the counteroffensive yet. But why are they using Western tech right now? There are reasons and explanations for this. Let's say Ukrainian Leopard tanks did fall under Russian artillery fire. So what? They're tanks. This is their purpose. To penetrate through the defensive lines. I mean, Russian defensive lines have artillery behind them which is shot in. The barrels are shot in, which means the coordinates are ready for the artillery crews, and immediately if they see any Ukrainian units on those coordinates, the artillery crew gets a signal and it's fire away and it hits where it needs to hit. This is the advantage of the defending side. There's nothing special about it. But the fact that Russians are sharing these videos and hurraying about it, being so proud about it, shows how little successes they have had. Destroying one tank shouldn't be a big thing. It is when you don't have anything else to show. So the Russian reaction we get from this destruction of Ukrainian Leopard tank shows us how in need they are of validation, how in need they are of success, because they're lacking right now. Tanks will be destroyed, ACPs will be destroyed, infantry fighting vehicles will be destroyed. Western tech. That's the price of this counteroffensive. That's the price of Ukrainian victory. Destroying this Leopard tank or destroying this first Leopard tank in this war doesn't tell us anything about the successes or failures of this Ukrainian counteroffensive. Of course, there are Ukrainian supporters claiming that all of these videos and photos are fake. For example, this Twitter account claims that the photo of the destroyed Leopard tank was from Syria. I'm not here to say either side is wrong or right. I'll let you do the deciding. I'm just giving you the information that's out there. For me, there is no problem in believing that the Leopards were destroyed because it's war. Doesn't matter which tank you have, artillery will destroy it. Soviet 122mm. One single straight shot is enough to destroy Abrams, Leopard, Challenger, any tank in existence. It doesn't matter which tank it is, so for me it's not a problem to believe. There are other videos that Russian telegrams are sharing right now showing supposed Ukrainian ACPs and armored convoys driving into Russian minefields. We see at least 3 to 4 explosions. If it is a Ukrainian convoy, then this convoy was very unlucky. They hit a minefield. This happens. If it's not the Ukrainian convoy, then it's a Russian propaganda. This happens. To give you perspective on these videos, on June 6th, well before any Leopard tanks were spotted on the Ukrainian side on the battlefield, Russians already released a video claiming that they destroyed the first Leopard tank. This is the video. And it later came out this was a farming tractor, a farming combine, a farming machine that they destroyed, claiming it was a Leopard tank. So Russians are in such need to show to their people that they destroy Leopard tanks because they're German and they love, and Russians have this religion of Den Babé, the Victory Day. They want to destroy a German tank because Russians have a tank cult. Even if Ukraine would destroy 10 Russian T-90s and in exchange Russians would destroy 1 Leopard tank, this in the Russian eyes would be a victory for the Russians. You know, they're blindsided by this. To end this, whether the Leopard was destroyed or not, or whether Ukrainian counteroffensive is dead in water or not, I will summarize and read you a tweet which I agree with 100%. The offensive hasn't even begun. Probing of defenses and recon has just begun. People on Twitter are so funny to jump into conclusions because there's one video of 20 plus vehicles disabled and 1 single Leopard tank destroyed. No Bradleys, no TOWs, no huge attacks. Chill, it will come. I do agree. I think this is a probing attack. We are not seeing hundreds of tanks, hundreds of ACPs. Small armored forces like this are usually to probe out weak spots in the enemy front and to lure out the enemy heavy artillery. Here we have a military map, and where are the attacks happening? Well, I mentioned them all in the last video. Not much has changed, only now we have more information. Southern front, this one, Rehi, the settlement right here. Most of the attacks happen south from Rehi. Ukrainian armor is pushed like this. Now, supposedly Ukrainians have advanced already as far as I have shown, a few hundred meters from Robotine, this settlement right here. So this map doesn't show it, but 5-kilometer penetration through the Russian lines. Also, the settlement of Lobkove was liberated by the Ukrainians. This map doesn't show it, but at least here before Robotine, if we're talking about 5 kilometers deep, then Ukrainians did penetrate through the first defensive line of the Russians. We're talking about minefields, we're talking about Dragon's Teeth, trench lines. They got through, but there were losses. But it wasn't a counteroffensive, and I'll go into it. But first we'll look at other locations where offensive operations happened from the Ukrainian side. Marinka, this settlement right here on the southern eastern front, this front line has been stable here from 2015, almost 10 years. And actually now, a few days ago, Chechen formed unit Akhmat, which was sent to Marinka to actually change this front line to push Ukrainians out of Marinka. They have not been able to do it. Akhmat Kadyrovites are in Marinka right now, and Kadyrov already claimed that they have taken 70% of the city. Well, the funny part is that last year Russians claimed that they have taken 80% of the city, so 70% this year should be a loss. But it's Russia, they don't really keep tabs of who takes what percentage. The truth is nothing has changed in the settlement, and Chechen fighters, Kadyrovites, have failed to penetrate the Ukrainian defensive lines. Then we have, of course, Bakhmut. A lot happening in Bakhmut. In the last video I already mentioned it. Biggest settlement taken for the Ukrainians is Berhivka. Next to this settlement are the heights around Bakhmut. Very important to take them, because any further offensive operations on the sides, at least on the northern side of Bakhmut, has to happen from those heights, because you can be very precise with artillery. The percentage of success is guaranteed more if you have the heights. So I'm guessing Ukraine's next goal is to grab these heights, plant the artillery crews on them, bombard Russian positions in Bakhmut and move on from the north. Heavy battles happening on the flanks. And Russians moving reserves into Bakhmut, of course. What is the biggest obstacle to Ukrainian probing attacks that we see from 3 places right now? One of the biggest ones is Russian glide bombs. Russian aviation has been very active. Glide bombs are an issue because if Russian planes fly into Ukraine, fly close to the front line, they will be shot down. But glide bombs are pre-positioned, pre-planned. The coordinates of the targets are in the bomb, and the plane can release the bomb about 20-30 kilometers away sometimes, and the bomb glides to the position. And they're unfortunately quite precise. They're nothing compared to Western tech, but they're okay with their precision. And the issue is that Russia has some of them. They don't have a huge amount, but they have enough to make a headache for the Ukrainians. And using glide bombs, Ukrainians cannot shoot down Russian planes because they can shoot them so far away. Glide bombs are a huge issue. They have a lot of explosives also. Why do I think it is not the counteroffensive? Well, because we have not seen a massive use of Ukrainian armor. Ukraine has an insane amount of armor, Western and Soviet. And we have only seen, what, about 40 to 50 armored vehicles in the past 24 hours. I mean, this is a probing attack. But why do these probing attacks? Why? Why do these probing attacks, recon battles, with such great losses that we see on the Ukrainian side? Well, there are actually very good reasons. The first reason is trying to lure the Russian heavy artillery out. The Russian heavy artillery crews have had an order not to shoot to minor incursions, because immediately if they shoot, Ukrainians know their locations and use counter-artillery, and since the Western artillery is more precise, Ukrainian counter-artillery always destroys them. So this Ukrainian attack is designed to make Russian heavy artillery shoot in order to destroy that heavy artillery, in order to start the counteroffensive. The second idea of thrusts on many locations. Right now we see three different locations, two of them in the east, one of them in the southeast, to hide the real location of the main thrust. Because if Russians would know it right now, and there would only be one recon battle in one location where the counteroffensive will happen later, Russians would gather their reserves there. Right now they have to gather reserves in the south and two different faraway locations in the east. They have no idea where the real thrust might come from. A lot of Russian reserves were residing in Mariupol, in Melitopol. These reserves now are beginning to move to the fronts. They already were moving to Bakhmut before. Ukraine needs these reserves on the front to know where they are, to not attack where they are. Because if they're still in the reserves, they have potential. If they're on the front, their potential is fulfilled. They cannot be moved fast. And the third reason is to find weak spots and exploit it. If you make one great thrust, you don't know if you're attacking a weak or a strong point. If you pin out the weak spots and then strike there, of course you're gonna have more success. My friends, these are the Russian losses of the past 24 hours, and these are the highest losses I have seen in manpower in months really. 1010 KIAs. Of course, Russians also are using offensive operations. In Marinka, as I said, the Chechen units are attacking with great losses, but I think most of these losses are coming because of Ukrainian offensive operations, especially if they broke through in some of the defensive lines. That means a lot of KIAs on the Russian side. 10 tanks, which is a half from the yesterday's losses. 24 armored personnel vehicles. That is a huge number again. 34 artillery systems. Now this is grand, this is huge, and this is the Ukrainian goal right now. Recon battle here, recon battle there. Russian artillery engages, and then Ukrainian counter-artillery fire destroys Russian heavy artillery, paving way for Ukrainian counteroffensive. You need to take out Russian heavy artillery because they have the potential to do a lot of damage to the Western armor. So this 34 right now shows us that the recon battles are having a positive outcome for Ukraine. 4 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Now it was 3 before and it was incredibly high. 4, well, I'm glad to see this number. Anything more than a 0, as I have said, is very good day for Ukrainians. 13 UAVs, 26 vehicles and fuel tanks, and 2 special equipment. Huge Russian losses, but also unfortunately huge Ukrainian losses, because they are the attacking side, and the attacking side will always take more losses. My friends, most of my videos don't have sponsors, and this one also doesn't. But I have made some surprises for you in my merch store, Ukrainian themed merch. It will be really cool and I'll be wearing them. I hope so will you. Go and check out estoniansoldier.com, link is in the description below. Get some cool merch to show that you support Ukraine. When we meet, we'll be wearing the same hat or the same shirt. Well, my right arm will have the Ukrainian trident on it. They look really awesome. The flooding of Nova Kakhovka is still really bad. About 10,000 Ukrainian civilians need to be evacuated, and about 3,500 have been evacuated, so there's a lot more work to be done. And that is only on the Kherson side of the Dnieper River. There's another side also, and now we have seen how Russians are dealing with these evacuations and this emergency. Well, they're not dealing with it. They're not evacuating people, and what's the worst part is that when they pulled out from Kherson, when they retreated, there's a lot of settlements on the Russian-occupied side of the Dnieper also, and Russians took all of the boats from the citizens of those settlements so they couldn't escape to the Ukrainian side. And now, for that reason, a few months later, there are no boats because Russian army took them, and there are floods there. The flooding there is as bad, but they have no boats. And the Russian army is not interested in evacuating or delivering food and water to them, so these people have no help. Especially we have reports of if a citizen has a Ukrainian passport, the army doesn't do anything. They will just leave them there. Ukrainian side, Ukrainian army is really fighting to get the civilians out. Zelensky visited Kherson to see the situation and to show support for the local people. I mean, immediately if something big happens and the people need help and need the army is there and Zelensky is there. He's leading by an example. I don't see Putin visiting that area. I don't see Putin caring at all about these people. I still see people claiming that it was the Ukrainians who blew up the dam, and for these people now we have scientific data that shows that Russians did it. Norway's nuclear test ban monitor NORSAR says seismic signals indicated that there was only one single big explosion. Russian claim was always that Ukrainians used HIMARS to destroy the dam. HIMARS, you would need at least 50 explosions with HIMARS, because we saw how HIMARS attacked the Antonovsky Bridge back when it was intact, and it took about 20 direct hits to damage the bridge, not destroy it. This dam would take about 50 direct hits, and there was only one big explosion, not 50 small ones, so it was done by explosives within the dam. It was the Russians. On these photos you can see the canals, the irrigation canals that all come from the reservoir that is now empty. And this has huge consequences. I mean, right now Ukrainian army is dealing with the consequences of evacuating the people of the flooding area, but in the future, in the next 5 years, Ukrainian economy and agriculture has to deal with the consequences of desertification of a huge area that was before green and that was before fields yielding crops. Look at this one, for example, the Green Canal. There's many different ones and we go through them all one by one, but you can see this canal carrying water to the entire countryside, actually, to the sea. All of it comes from the reservoir because it's not salty water. Of course, you cannot take it from the sea. And you can see that the ground from the satellite image is greener next to the canal. All of this greenery is dependent on this water. Now it doesn't come anymore. This area will turn into a desert, killing off all of the main export of this area. Huge economical blow. This is the Kakhovsky Reservoir, and this channel goes to the north of it. And here is a small lake next to Rehi, and this lake is used for fish breeding, for fish. It's a fish farm. Now that this reservoir is empty, the agriculture next to the channel will all die out and this area will turn into a desert and this lake will dry, killing off the fish, again taken away from the export. This channel that comes south from the reservoir is called Upper Hachinsky Channel, and this provides drinking water to all of the settlements we see and of course to the agriculture next to the channel. Again, desertification plus no drinking water to the settlements. We're talking tens of thousands of people. We already saw the South Kakhovsky Canal gives drinking water to hundreds of settlements, small villages and some bigger cities. And of course the agriculture we already talked about. Again, a huge disaster, and we see Melitopol gets their drinking water also from this canal. North Crimean Canal, it reaches far west, supplying water to all of these fields. And you can see these little squares, they're all fields yielding crops every year. Well, this is all desertification right now. And the more interesting fact is this canal actually brought water to Crimea, which has had the issue for a long time. So we already see in Crimea, which will be the future of this southern Ukraine, desertification and no drinking water. Unless Ukrainian counteroffensive is successful, the dam is repaired, and we have a lot of rain next year. To summarize the Novakhovka Dam destruction, I will read you a tweet that summarizes pretty well. The destruction of Novakhovka Dam by Russians follows almost exactly all the other hideous crimes Russians have committed. Number 1, execute the crime. Number 2, laugh and brag. Number 2, realize the catastrophe. Number 4, change the story and blame others. Now we're gonna watch a short video, and this is a drone operator who delivered water to the Russian occupied side of the Dnieper River Oleshki settlement. Since Russians don't care at all, Ukrainian army also has to deal with that side of the civilians, but they cannot physically evacuate them because they cannot get there. But they can deliver some minimal amount of water with drones. In the course of 4 daily activities, we received information about civilians who were literally trapped by the disaster and needed help. We decided to focus all our efforts on saving their lives. Our drones were used to deliver drinking water and food and escort boats to the evacuation site. As you can see, Ukrainian drone crews that were dealing with destroying Russian armored personnel carriers, tanks, artillery systems are now dealing with saving the lives of the people by delivering water to them. This is exactly what the Russians wanted, but Ukrainians don't have a choice. They have to save these people. We'll watch another video of Russian propagandists suggesting that they should destroy another dam in Ukraine. Since it has already come to the destruction of the hydropower plant, maybe we should take a closer look at the beginning of this cascade. The Kiev hydropower plant. Kiev also has one. There's a beautiful reservoir there, a little high above Kiev. There's like 4 cubic kilometers of water there. I'd think about it. So he just suggests destroying that. I mean, we're talking about Kiev, we're talking about 100,000 plus casualties, maybe more. And they're talking about it openly like that. What are we going to achieve? Just to show... There's no military value to it. He just answered just to show them. Just to show them what we're about, we have to kill 100,000 of the Kiev people. You know, I think they need to take responsibility. We need to answer for Shepikino. We need to go to Kharkiv region. They live a completely peaceful life there. Put artillery and are engaged in the destruction of our border cities without any military. He suggests putting artillery and bombarding Kharkiv. Well, he's late. I mean, S-300s on the Russian side are already doing it. They just destroy civilian infrastructure. It's so weird with the Russians, as I said, how they read the Russian information, just turn it around. Everything that they do, they accuse the world of doing to them. Why should we be holier than the Pope? We only destroy military facilities, we are not at war with the people. My friends, I want to thank you for coming back day and day again. Without audience, I wouldn't have anybody to make these videos too. The fate of the Ukrainian people is sad, but with getting this information out there, more people see Russia for what they really are. Thank you for coming back and seeing it, and seeing the truth. And to thank 5 new patrons, I'm going to butcher their names with my Estonian pronunciation. I suggest putting in earplugs because ear bleeding might happen. David Puktenika, Moral Heart, Matev Persson, Andreas Eriksson, Mattei Kek, or Zek. This one is difficult, I've never seen that letter in my life. Thank you to these 5 people for supporting the channel. If you like my channel, the Patreon link is in the description below. I also have a Twitter account where 3 times a day you'll get the most important news about Russia-Ukrainian war. Links in the description below, as well as Instagram. I'll see you there, my friends. Until my next video, Slava Ukraini.